Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tools Show. We're here to help you and your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady Shearer, your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. We call him the caffeinated cameraman. It's Alexander Mills.
Hello, hello.
We've got 4 great questions from the people of Pro Church Nation. If you want your question answered, send us a text to 1-800-485-3139. This is our second week on the video show. Channel is up, prochurchpodcast.com. And to celebrate, we're hosting the Pro Church Tools Summer Giveaway of 2023. And we've got 3 grand prizes to give away to celebrate the debut.
One might say it's our best giveaway ever.
Wow.
When I saw the prizes, I started creating anonymous accounts so that I myself could enter. And you'll never know.
I know
which
for
accounts are mine.
sure multiple pastors at the same church have already entered because both of their names started with J with the same last name. And they submitted within like 15 minutes of each other. So I respect the grind.
Yes.
These pastors getting together and being like, okay, hey, we got to find a way to enter. So
Giving
here's
away a drone and a free website? Like, come on.
That's right. So that is the first prize, a brand new DJI Mini 3 drone, plus $500 of credit on your Nucleus account and a free Nucleus Universe, where we will build your entire church website for you on the Nucleus platform, your plan to visit sequence, your new visitor follow-up sequence. You can see all that's included in that at nucleus.church/universe. That's prize number 1. Prize number 2 is $500 of Nucleus credit on your account and a free Nucleus Universe. And prize number 3 is $500 of credit on your Nucleus account.
How do we enter?
How do you enter? First thing to do is subscribe to the new YouTube channel for the Pro Church Tools Show. ProChurchPodcast.com is the way to get there. I'm not certain how the Pro Church Tools Show is going to show up in search this new as a channel, but you can also go to youtube.com/Pro Church Tools, which is our main channel. And if you scroll all the way down, you can see like featured channels that we featured, and we featured the podcast channel there. So you can find it that way also. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. The only way to confirm that is you got to take a screenshot that you've done it. And then what you want to do is text that screenshot along with your question for the show, because this is a Q&A show for the most part, to the text line 1-800-485-3139. Now you might say, well, I'm from a different country and we are not able to text that text line. Seems that is the case for some countries. So if that is true for you, you can do the exact same thing, subscribe to the channel, take a screenshot, send it along with your question for the show to hello@prochurchtools.com. Now, if you send a screenshot and no question, I'm afraid that's not a valid entry. So you will not be considered. If you send with your question, the screenshot that you've confirmed subscribing to either the text line or the email, and you're one of the first 1,000 to do so, your entry is counted as double.
Double it.
So there is some urgency to this. The winners will be announced on the show Wednesday, August 2nd.
Wow.
That is the show where we will be announcing the winners.
Well, speaking of the text line, and I know it's only our second show on YouTube, I have a public apology that I have to issue already.
Oh boy. He has not told me about this.
This camera, propaganda, also known as Jason Petty. I owe you a sincere apology.
Yeah, you slandered him on last
week on the show. We were talking about text lines, and I said, hey, I signed up for this text line. Propaganda tweeted about it. He said, it's me on the other end. I did not believe it was propaganda on the other end. I have been made aware today, actually, through some DMs with photo evidence that it is, in fact, propaganda, also known as Jason Petty, on the other end of that text line. So, Jason, this is my public apology here on YouTube, now for all to see. And here, I'll also be texting you after the show. I look forward to your response. So I blew it. And the first couple responses from that text line surely were automated. But I guess if you dig in and like text him back, it's prop on the other end. So I'm going to be doing some texting with propaganda this afternoon.
I feel like you've kind of, lost your chance on that now.
We'll see. I'm not sure if he's a listener to the podcast. I'm a listener to his podcasts. But yeah, I really went after him last week, and I feel terrible about it.
I respect the, underground marketing that you've done here, the controversial Christian, generating controversy on the very first episode. Especially, obviously I might do that.
Yeah.
But you, the dedicated, humble, moral pastor that you are to go to these lengths just to generate some new buzz for the show.
Yeah,
I
you
respect
thought
it.
the giveaway was going to do it. No, it's wrapping propaganda into the drama of the show. That
Of all the times that I have attempted to get you to compromise your morals and ethical standards to failure, I have not succeeded. For it to happen here of your own volition,
Yeah.
I respect it.
Yeah.
What a committed company man.
Yes, but it is us. In fact, it's you on the other end of our text line. So we look forward to your texts, your questions, and your entries into this giveaway of the summer. Shall we get into the questions?
Indeed.
First question: what are your thoughts on Threads? Is Meta doing too much? And how can churches utilize this new social platform?
All right, lots of questions of this variety and this ilk. Meta announced Threads a couple weeks ago, a new rival to Twitter. And this came on the heels of Twitter's rate limit exceeded fiasco.
What a day.
So I'm curious if Meta was, typically you wouldn't hold back a release. You would put it out as soon as it's ready. In the tech world, waiting is not something that is typically practiced. It did seem like very convenient timing for Twitter to have this huge fiasco where literally tweets weren't loading. Probably the worst misstep, let's call it, of Elon's young tenure as the head of Twitter. And then for Zuck to slip in and be like, yeah, I've been in the gym, but I've also been in the lab.
He came off the top rope, and I use the wrestling analogy because I don't know if these guys are going to fight, but it seems like they're actually going to physically fight. Did you see the picture of Zuckerberg on Twitter yesterday?
He's yoked.
He is just chiseled.
I mean, work on the chest hair, my guy. But
Well, yeah. But he came off the top rope with this app at the perfect time because Twitter was literally, and Twitter has had many meltdowns, especially since the new captain is at the helm there. But it was having a meltdown of epic proportions, and Instagram Meta just comes over the top and says, you know what? Click this button and you'll have a new social profile set up, and here's your new Twitter.
And within the first hour of the release, I had merged the accounts, created the account. The head of Instagram is already slandering Twitter. It's so funny because you see them in their, these are publicly traded companies. So there's a lot of reporting. There is a lot of press appearances where they are, buttoned up and they are following the PR scripts that they have we then they launch their new app we
It's just a
realize
joke, yeah.
they're all just like kids in their computers the way we are at our, like everyone is the same at the end of the day. Here's the thing. When new platforms debut, they always generate a ton of buzz. We have gone through this enough times, and we have seen this happen where we're like, is this going to change everything? And I get 1 million DMs and 100 emails, and people be like, what should we do? Like, is this going to change everything? And my response always, and with this platform, is the same. Hit pause. Nothing has changed. This platform is going to generate a ton of buzz. They are going to, toot the horn. 100 million new subscribers, the fastest growing platform of all time. These don't mean anything. None of these numbers mean anything, okay? Because what does matter is once the buzz has settled, once the brouhaha has simmered, will the platform have carved out a unique base and a unique niche within the social scape to stick around? And I'll tell you this, I don't make social media predictions. If you've DM'd me, Braid, what's next? I do not make social media predictions. Why? Because there's so much opportunity that exists right now that I would much rather look at the state of this very young industry and take advantage of what's here right now, rather than try to guess at what's next. This is not real estate where you need to guess where the next gold rush is going to be to get in on the ground floor. That's not really where social's at because it's still so young of an industry. With all that being said, I would be surprised, and glad to be proven wrong, I would be surprised if Threads becomes a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter is commonly referred to as the public square on the internet, and that's how it functions for me. I think Threads is really cool, and I think, first of all, the transition from Instagram to setting up your Threads account was so effortless, so seamless. It's obviously why they have, it was 7 or 10 million users in the first, I don't know how many minutes, and then in the first week, 100 million users, a ton of users. They did that work for us and made it easy to transition. The app is pretty awesome. It feels a lot like Twitter. It's nice looking. It functions well. The feed has some problems with the algorithm that I don't prefer. And I think that there's a potential and an opportunity for use, especially with brands and such that have established Instagram followings, which we're going to get into. But I just don't see a future, and again, happy to be proven wrong here for myself, but I don't see a future of it becoming the new public square on the internet. Twitter has just been so established, and I find myself in my own personal use. Like, my Twitter feed is so curated, and because I've been on there for years, like, I could use Threads in the same way. I could start posting what I post on Twitter to Threads, but the public square that I've curated on Twitter, like, I'm not going to go out of my way to recreate that on Threads. So I think there's a new opportunity, but I'm not confident it's going to replace how Twitter functions for most people.
Yeah, and we talked about this recently. We're starting to see the stratification of social media platforms. And so when I say I don't see Threads becoming a big thing, what I mean is I don't see it elevating itself to the status of what we typically think of when we think of a major social platform. We think of Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I don't anticipate Threads reaching that status. That doesn't mean that it won't be able to carve out its own little space.
Right.
But traditionally, thus far, in the first 15, 10 years of social, we haven't seen that become a thing. Anytime a platform has carved out a unique space, it has either been acquired by one of the big platforms, or the features have been copied by one of the big platforms, and it has not been able to maintain its rise. And it's kind of just descended into mediocrity, or just, hey, it fizzled out. So, is there a middle ground? I think that going forward, there's the potential that we'll begin to see that middle ground, where a platform, it's not one of the big five, but it's also not just descending into obscurity because it's been dwarfed by one of the big five. Is there a place for a middle class, as it were, social platform? Perhaps. We haven't seen it so far, but as we see more of the stratification of social platforms, where not every person is on every platform, but people choose the platforms they want. It's kind of like, this is a terrible analogy, but it's the only one I can think of, all right? Imagine if one day, and it never existed before, a restaurant opened where you could go out and eat dinner. Previously, all we did was make meals at home. But now, there was this place where you could make a meal someone made for you. And it was like the only place in town. And then like a couple years later, another place opened. And a couple years later, another place opened. And these like 3 places were the only places you can eat. And in every city, there were these 3 places. And then every time a new place would open, like, oh no, we do Mexican food. One of the big 3 was like, cool, we'll do that too. And they were just so big, it didn't really matter if the Mexican food was quite as good. It was like, hey, you know what? It's just all in one place. I'm already going there. We already all know it. We'll just keep going there. Eventually, though, a place comes that's so good and it can't be copied that, yeah, it never elevates to be as big as one of those big 3, but it has its own spot. It has carved out its own area. Industries do evolve in that way. We haven't seen that yet with social. Seems possible, though.
Yeah, this is so interesting from Instagram specifically, because they've tried this before with IGTV. Remember when IGTV was its own standalone app?
Braid, is IGTV the future?
Honestly. And it's like they wanted to do longer form video, and so they moved it to another app.
Is YouTube done?
Yeah, some of us started using it, and then just kind of like quietly got absorbed back into the app. IGTV was part of the Instagram app for a while, and now you can't post long form videos there anymore at all. Now Instagram has tried, like text-based sharing. Instagram has tried in a few ways in the Instagram app with like the community notes feature, where you can share a text-based note of, I don't know how many characters it was, like 40 characters for 24 hours, kind of like a story. And then they also have, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but the thing where you can, a broadcast channel.
The broadcast channel, but then there was also like collections or posts or guides.
Yes. And it's like, so they've tried some things that aren't visual based and more text based that haven't gone off on their own. Now they've brought that outside the app into a new app that definitely has much more traction than IGTV ever did, because it functions like Twitter, which is an app that a lot of us are using. Like, I'm on Twitter more than any other social platform.
Same.
And so they have tried this, like,
what does it say about us? We're real sickos.
Yeah. Portioning features off to other apps before with IGTV. I feel this one to be different, and we'll see if it carves out a little niche where brands figure out a way to because brands, especially small brands, don't do well on Twitter because they don't have an existing audience there.
Right.
It's really hard to build an existing audience. Twitter is the hardest place for me to build an audience. Like I've been on Twitter for a long time.
I have more followers on Threads than I have on Twitter already.
Isn't that?
It's been 5 days.
Yeah. Like I have over 2,000 followers on Threads. I've been tweeting a lot and some pretty good content, I think, on Twitter for a long time. Like 396 followers on Twitter or something. It's really hard to grow an audience there. So for small local businesses, you get to bring your existing Instagram audience over to a text-based app kind of like Twitter, and you get to start sharing different type of content there. I think there's an opportunity there, and I hope it sticks around for that reason.
It's a great point because churches ask me, should we be on Twitter? And I say, like, unless your pastor is Derwin Gray,
Right.
has a following, loves Twitter, clearly. No. And even Derwin, he tweeted a bunch recently. He's like, you know what? I've had enough of Twitter. And then someone sent him our show, and he was like, you know what? Seems like people are positively impacted by Twitter. I'll stay on. So even the ones that have a following are like, is this worth it?
Yeah.
So what we'll also say is, how might we be wrong? Well, what did Threads do that was really cool and no other platform has done before? They allowed you to bring your existing audience to this new platform.
Yeah.
That has never been done in the history of social. Every time a new platform has come out, we have had to start from scratch. Snapchat comes out, start from scratch. TikTok comes out, start from scratch. Instagram comes out, Twitter comes out, we start from scratch. YouTube comes out, we start from scratch. That was 2005, so of course we started from scratch. Instagram Threads releases, and they allow you to connect your existing account, choose, yes, I want to bring over my followers and following, and now you have a ton of momentum and inertia from day one.
Yeah.
That had never been done before. And so I think what that does is it encourages people to post. It encourages people to engage. It encourages people to open the app because they know all the people that have chosen to follow me, that I've worked hard to curate over the years, they're already here. And that could be the reason that it beats the odds in respect to, I guess, our skepticism that it becomes a platform.
And you're getting engagement right away because your audience is there. Sometimes for me on Twitter, I'll post something and it feels like posting into the void. And it's like, some people may see this and I just have to pray that the algorithm shows it to more people than are normally going to see it. But on Threads, especially because it's new and people are like actively checking it out, you come over with your existing audience. Your first thread already has an existing audience. People are listening. And because people are trying this new shiny thing, they're responding. And so there's an engagement like loop, feedback loop happening already. And it's been really cool to see that engagement at least. But like I said, the feed right now, you don't have a following feed, which is a mess. Like if I'm going to spend time on Threads, I want to see the people I'm following because the algorithmic kind of for you feed right now is just no fun at all. For me, at least, it's just because I don't follow many people on Threads yet. It's just kind of a hot mess of popular culture things that I don't care about. So that's why I find myself just swiping back to the Bird app.
So let's look at the engagement. Okay, so I have north of 12,000 followers on Threads. I've published half a dozen times here, a variety of different content. The highest engaged post I have is kind of in that first 48 hours where everyone was opening their app. 350 likes, 36 replies, and it's me talking about Threads.
Right.
So it's meta, it's highly topical during those first 48 hours. Other posts, 61 likes. That was my first one. 29 likes, 95 likes, 8 likes, 17 likes, which are the last two.
Okay.
And so what I'm kind of seeing already is, hey, the buzz and the momentum is dropping off. And is it able to create the behavior where when we open our app, we want to open Threads? We have the behavior of, I'm going to open my phone. I'm going to check out this app, this app, this app, this app. Threads isn't one of those apps.
Right.
So how does it become one of those apps?
Yeah.
That's the uphill battle that all of these platforms face. Now, Threads uniquely has some things going for it, as we've discussed. So what should you as a church do? What I always recommend for every platform, Threads is no different. Create your account, secure your username, poke around, publish a couple of times so it doesn't just look like a kind of a ghost town on your account, and kind of just observe. Because you don't want to stop what you're doing already. Do not abandon your established platforms for the new one unless you want to play that kind of game that sometimes is worth it, where you're like, you know what? The only way for my church and me to get a big following is to go hard on one of these new platforms. And I'm going to choose to go hard on Threads. And that's definitely something that I would support. Most churches are like, no, I'm just kind of fine doing what we're doing. Great. But if you're really eager, you can try that. Just know that you're likely playing a losing game where you're going to, you'll make that gamble and it'll likely fizzle out. But that might be the most realistic chance that you do develop a big following that you can then
Yeah.
port over to other platforms.
Threads is weird for me because on Instagram, I'm a coffee blogger, and that's it. That's how I present to the world.
And Twitter, you're a pacifistic theologian.
On Twitter is like the rest of me. And so when I got on Threads, I'm like, well, I have my audience who knows me for coffee, but the content is like Twitter. Who am I going to be? So far I'm trying to marry the two. We'll see how that goes, but you can follow us on Threads. We're there. Next question. Love the new podcast studio. Thank you. Can you talk about the setup?
Yeah, so I am a huge fan of like the clean white look. When the pandemic was happening and the studio was set up in my guest bedroom, kind of created that clean white look. And we wanted to do something similar with the podcast. A lot of kind of traditional YouTube setups are single light, dark, highly contrasty, lots of shadow, and like an LED light behind you.
Which is funny because if you walk out that door into the rest of our open office space, that is definitely the vibe. Like dark navy walls, exposed metal beams. There's some exposed brick. It's got that like modern industrial look, which is nice, but it's not this.
Precisely. So where did this inspiration come from? This is kind of like concrete and beige. A little bit of Tulum, maybe some Mediterranean, decor inspiration. I'm told the Kardashians' homes are very beigey and concrete. I'm like, okay, interesting. My friends are like, watch the Kardashians, the new version on Disney Plus. It's better. They're in control. They're the producers.
Okay.
So we haven't watched it yet. Silo, yeah.
Yes.
Well, Silo's over now.
Yes,
but
that's
hey,
fair.
season 2.
Yeah.
So we spec this all out. And the thing that we knew we were going to have is a lot of lights. So there are a total of 7 lights in this studio. Right now, there's a key light on each of us, Aputure 120D.
Yeah.
We also have lighting the backdrops here, a pair of also Aputures. These are the F21X.
Yeah.
So there's one behind Alex a bit, one behind me a bit, kind of facing the wall to increase that ambient lighting. And then there are a pair of hair lights for each of us, the Aputure P60X. And then finally,
There's one more. Are we going to talk about it?
maybe you should. I'll tell him it's an Aputure 600D that we bought during the pandemic because I was like, we're going to become experts in lighting. And then we literally never used it. It's one of the most powerful like LED lights that exists. Typically, you would need a different type of light to get this type of power, but Aputure, kind of the leaders in this. So it's a 600D. We have a spotlight mount attached to it and then a gobo to create this light effect. It's kind of like this churchy window gobo that we have attached, and Alexander was the one that kind of set this all up. So
Listen, I didn't know if we were going to pull back the proverbial curtain. I'll actually take some clips with my iPhone and put them up on the screen here so you can see what we're working with. But this is in fact not a window. It looks like a window, but it is not. This is a room with 4 walls. It's actually an awfully little room. The studio that we've made here makes this room appear a lot bigger than it actually is.
this is when you want to watch the video version of the show, so you can see all the behind the scenes.
Yeah, and this Aputure 600D is ginormous. The original plan was to mount it from the ceiling, and you were away when I was setting up this studio. You were in Portugal, I believe. And I kind of had to make an executive decision. I thought to myself, am I going to try and hang this thing from the ceiling, or am I just going to go the safe route and put it on a C-stand? So I put it on a C-stand. It fits. This is the biggest light I've ever held. And especially with this kind of gargantuan studio, like a spotlight extension to create this effect. So there are some gobos, like you mentioned, that we slide into the spotlight.
How would you
mount.
describe a gobo for someone?
Yeah,
that...
it's this metal disc, this little miniature cutout, and it looks like a mini window. And there are different designs. We have trees, and we have different types of shades. And we went with an original shade that we just weren't loving the look of, but then we had this kind of arched, churchy type
similar
shade.
to the arch that's behind you that we added to the wall.
Yes, and to be honest, when I was holding the gobo, I did not think it was going to look good, and we put it in, and we both fell in love with it. It's like, yes, this is the vibe. So this is a spotlight that is so large, I can hear the fan running from here. You can't hear it on the mic, but I can hear the fan running from here because it runs hot. It's big. It's counterbalanced with sandbags on the ground because we can't risk it falling over. I did mount some of the lights to the ceiling, but that one I could not because it was so large. But we fit them all in here. There's no airflow in this room.
No.
We haven't overheated yet. We're in the heat of summer right now. We haven't overheated yet.
If we can survive now.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm really, really happy with the way the studio build turned out. We did all the work in-house. Kyle, my desk mate, helped with some drywall, and him and I put up this wallpaper together that we can talk about in a moment. I set up all this decor, and we spent a couple weeks doing some test footage and moving some stuff around an inch here, an inch there, and I think we're really happy with the way it turned out. And I'm glad people love it too.
Yeah, we completed the construction ourselves, which felt like a big win for us. And we completed, Alex configured all of the gear. And so we had this lime wash wallpaper. We had to paint over and then fix some of the drywall, that was all Kyle. And then this is lime wash wallpaper from Etsy. We've got some fake plants, a lot of just, again, stuff from Etsy or from Wayfair. And we'll talk about the cameras too. So 3 cameras, 3 Sonys. We've got an A1, which is the wide camera. It's been giving us some trouble with its overheating issues, which we think we fixed.
We'll see.
Have we?
We're shooting at 8K on that one because that camera has a crop on 4K.
On 4K, yeah. So, because we didn't want to buy any new cameras, but we only had 3 Sonys. So we got the FX3 and then the A7S3 that are on the individual speaker
Which
angles.
essentially internally are the same camera.
Different body, but sensor-wise, internals are identical. The A1's a bit different. And, we got this new table, and we got these new chairs.
This table is huge. It weighs 250 pounds.
Yeah. And then we have a new carpet. And, the soundproofing isn't excellent. We used to have all these hanging packing blankets that were black in our darker setup, but we can't. We need the ambient light. All the light needs to bounce anywhere that it can.
Yeah.
And so, that's a bit of the setup. Shure SM7B mics that we've always used, sound devices, audio device that we've always used. Same old.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, for sure. Yeah, happy it turned out. I mean, I'm never really happy, right?
It was the first thing you said when you got back from your trip. You're like, yeah, if I could do it all over again. I was like, oh my.
I was with Brett yesterday, and we're hanging out. One of our pastor friends, the man that introduced us, actually, and he was in town. He's like, oh, so what do you think of the studios? He's like, I love it, and I was like, yeah, and then he was like, well, what's wrong with it? And I was like, nothing. So what's the problem? He's like, you know the problem? Me. I'm the problem. I'm the drama. It's me.
Yeah.
So I've come to the place where I have to keep reminding myself, nobody cares but you. And at the end of the day, you are not an artist. Like your ultimate role in this company and in life is not artist. So you can't tweak everything until you die, which is what an artist understandably does. You're not a filmmaker, okay? You have certain goals and priorities in this company. And you are holding those goals back because you are an idiot. So I had to come to terms with that. And that is something I've been coming to terms with over the last 5 years. I think every creative person at some level struggles with that. And you have to just be like, hey, this is good enough.
Yeah.
And good enough doesn't mean you've compromised.
Sure.
Everyone else thinks it's great. Good enough means you acknowledge that you have serious issues and you need to move on.
This studio is like being a worship leader. Like, when you fall in love with a song as a worship leader, you rehearse it with your team, you get ready to introduce it to your church. And by the time your church is really like coming to enjoy it and get a hold of it, is the time that you are just absolutely sick of it. So that's what this studio is. And we're not sick of it, but we've been working on it for a long time, but this is just the second time that it's been on YouTube. So yeah, everyone else still loves it. And we're thinking about what we'll do next.
What's the next song? Please send help.
Yeah. How about the next question? Third question on today's show. On the Social Media Church podcast this week, they talked about developing an AI policy similar to how you should have a social media policy. Is that something that you've processed at all yet? If so, what would you include in a policy like that?
Yeah, so developing an AI policy for your church. Really 2 things come to mind for me. The first is, why are we using AI? You need to articulate this for yourself and for your team. My definition that you can use for sure is AI can be a useful shortcut.
Yeah.
That is the way that I would define my reason for using it. And then second, what are the boundaries for AI? We will not use AI as our exclusive source is kind of my definition for that. So the 2 reasons we're using, or the two stanzas in the policy. Why are we using AI and what are the boundaries for it? Let's walk through some examples of this. So example number 1, this was from last week's episode. Our headshots have a black bar around them. AI can eliminate that and fill out that negative space using generative fill. So does that abide by our 2 stanzas in the policy? A useful shortcut, yes. What else could we do? Well, we could go out and we could shoot new images where like the center is identical, but that way we shoot it wide enough where the exterior is filled in. What are the boundaries? We will not use AI as our exclusive source. Well, like the person in the center of the photo is not changing at all. We're just filling in the blurred out background around it. So that abides by those 2 things. Okay, good to go. Example number 2, we want to write a description for the About Us page on the church website. So you input into the AI generator, Legacy Church is a church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are dedicated to seeing young families flourish and connect to Jesus in their community. And then AI is going to write a description for your About Us page that uses that as the source and expounds upon it. So it's a helpful shortcut. Could you write it yourself? Sure. And then the second thing is, it's not the exclusive source. I gave it the instruction and like the foundation, and it's just kind of like doing some alliteration and some expounding upon that. Okay. Example number 3, I'm writing a sermon. And so I go to AI and I go, okay, AI, like, what does the book of James say about mercy? And can you have citations for that? Does that pass this test? It doesn't. Is it a useful shortcut? Yes, I could do that myself. But alone, I'm now relying on it to be the exclusive source. Yes, it's citing, presumably, from the book of James, but unless I cross-reference what it's claiming to do with something else, I can't be certain. And Alex, why can I not be certain?
Because ChatGPT is a liar, and I didn't know this until recently. So I've used ChatGPT in the exact same way, actually to generate some social content. Tell me 3 things Jesus said about being rich or whatever. And it'll spit out some scripture references. And because ChatGPT, as far as I understood it, and I've learned that I don't understand ChatGPT at all, as I understood it, it's just like scouring Google or like publicly available information. Like it would be hard to screw up a reference like that. So I put my blind faith, there's a sermon illustration in here somewhere, my blind faith, my blind trust into ChatGPT. Sure, this is what Jesus says about being rich. But I've recently learned that ChatGPT has the tendency to make things up. And you can prove this by going to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you tell me, give me a quote by Tolkien about blank? And it'll spit out a quote by Tolkien about whatever you input. And sometimes, if you do the bother to cross-reference that with Google or your search engine of choice by, copying and pasting the quote and putting it in, you might find that ChatGPT has either paraphrased something Tolkien has said at best, or at worst, completely fabricated a quote by Tolkien. It is not doing this once or twice. It is repeatedly doing this to the point where, and you can find this story on Google somewhere, a lawyer has recently gotten into some hot water because he used ChatGPT in his discovery portion to cite some cases in a case that he was working on. And he got found out because all of the citations that ChatGPT he gave him that he then included in his case proved to be unfactual, and to the point where they didn't even exist.
This was on BBC, Gizmodo, and The Verge, just looking it up. So you can, if you type in ChatGPT lying lawyer, you'll find it.
So I thought, I was under the assumption that ChatGPT deserved my allegiance, my entire faith, my entire trust, and that just proves to be not true. So to the point, in your policy, it's imperative to have AI cannot be your exclusive source, because even in the case of asking ChatGPT to do some research for you, to give you some sources, it's imperative that you cross-reference those with the internet to prove that they are in fact real citations.
And in the example of it writing website copy for you, if it expounds upon the description of your church that you've provided and it says some things that aren't true, like, oh, and we have a ton of Sunday services and we also do like courses throughout the week. Well, we don't do courses throughout the week. Well, you would just not include that. But when you're doing it with the research, that can be a little bit more precarious because you are not the ultimate authority on all things. So,
Wow. Although I thought when I first met ChatGPT, I thought, you are the authority on all things.
Dang.
In fact, I have the ChatGPT app on my phone.
GPT?
Yes, and I've been using it just to do some shortcutting for me. I was looking for flights. Hey, can you find the cheapest route from A to B on these dates? Blah, blah, blah. And it's served to be pretty helpful. But we've had a fracture in our relationship. And
well, especially after it served you those flights that were like $85 on Flight GPT. And you were like, that's not a real airline.
Actually, for that, it gave me the result I was looking for.
Okay.
But yeah, we've had a
as far as
fracture,
you know.
and we're taking some space right
Yeah.
now. Yeah, me and ChatGPT.
I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Just consider those two things. There's so much more you could add on the policy front.
Sure.
But why are we using it? What are the boundaries?
Yeah. And I think you should use it, and you should have those boundaries. Fourth and final question on today's show. Brady, you have mentioned that you're breaking into the world of watches. This questioner says happy dance, so it seems like they're a watch wearer as well. I was skeptical of you until you mentioned the Wolf 1834 watch case, heart eyes emoji. What are you looking at watch-wise, and have you made any purchases?
Yeah, so it seems like me referencing the watch case that I bought has somehow
You got street cred.
provided credibility to the voices that I'm listening to as
Yeah.
I begin my journey into timepieces.
Yes.
So if you want to see the Watch 1834 case, we'll put it on the screen. This is in the British racing color green, and there are 10 spots for watches, and then there's a little drawer. So I keep my measuring tape in there. I have a ring that I wear that goes in there. My polishing little cloth and some of my spare links from the watches that I have. They all kind of go in there. So why watches? Similar to
All the time.
That's right. You know what? There was my issue.
Yeah, I routinely didn't know what time it was. So.
I kind of think of watches like similar to tattoos.
Sure.
So it's like they mark something special and they're always with you.
Yeah.
And as someone that really does enjoy like fashion and style, there are certain items that you like, but you can only wear so often. It's like I'm wearing a pair of trousers today that I've wanted to wear for a while. I just don't wear trousers that often, and it's been warm. And so like I tried them on and I like them. What's really cool about watches is like you always wear them. They're with you all the time. And so they kind of become like this part of you. And when I was getting into watches, one of the first things that I did before I started purchasing, before I started saying I'm committed to this, is I bought this book called A Man and His Watch. And it's this collection, beautifully photographed, of stories of men throughout history, the watches that they owned and why those watches were special to them and how they came across it. Because I was like, okay, I'm not just doing this for like, oh, cool watches, like status this. I was like, no, I want to understand like, why is this so important? And because I wasn't raised with a father that cared about this sort of thing. There's no history in my family, aside from maybe my grandfather, who I've now spoken to about his watches and why they're important to him. And so I kind of wanted to like understand that. And I had gotten into watches a bit a few years ago. Do you remember this perhaps?
COVID.
Gosh. And what I didn't realize was I would buy these watches that I thought were beautiful because they were. And I'd get them in and I'd put them on my wrist and I'd be like, it's just not right. There's something wrong about this. And what I realized was I was buying watches that were the very popular size for most men, but at least in my eyes and based on my wrist size, were too large. So all of them were 40 millimeters or greater. And I have smaller wrists, 17 centimeters, 6 3/4 inches. And so like the 40, 41, 42 millimeter watches, which are the most popular, were just like gaudy on me.
Right.
I like the smaller, slender things. So what happened was, you mentioned I was in Portugal not too long ago. And so we were in Lisbon for one day before we flew home. And we were walking down kind of the main shopping stretch in Lisbon. And there was a Cartier on one side of the street and a Rolex on the other. And the thing about watches is you can't actually buy them.
Right.
They're like Hermes bags, which thankfully my wife has no interest in. Where like you can go in and be like, can I buy this? And they're like, they like laugh at you. And so I didn't even want to go in these stores. But I'm with my friend Justin, and I'm the type that's like, no, we have to follow the rules. Yep. This is the protocol. And he's like, just go in. So I try to open the Rolex store.
You gotta be careful though, because you can't go into a Ferrari store wearing shorts. You have to be wearing pants.
See, I didn't know that.
Right.
Or exactly. And
So that would be a thing at a watch store. It's like,
I didn't bring nice clothes. We were on a filming trip.
Yes.
So like, I go up to the Rolex store, and I open the door. No, it's locked.
Of course.
And I feel like such a bozo.
Yes.
And
by appointment only.
Justin is like, maybe it's closed.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we look up and the hours are open. And we're like, oh no, they just don't want me.
They just don't want you.
So someone comes in and they let me in. I'm like, okay, good. So I'm walking around. I'm like, what's the protocol? I don't know what to do. And so I'm just waiting for someone to catch my eye. And this lady, thank goodness, she was very nice. She's like, hey, how can I help you? I was like, well, I just want to try on a watch. It doesn't matter what brand. It doesn't matter what model. Just like a 36 millimeter watch. And she's like, sure. So she breaks out a 36 millimeter. And I tried on my wrist. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't dislike watches.
Right.
I just had ones that were the wrong size.
Right.
And it was like the perfect fit. So then we go across the street to Cartier. And there's a security guard at the door, just like with Rolex. And he goes, this is by appointment only, but I can get you in. You just need to wait for a bit. So we waited outside for about 10 minutes. He welcomes me in. I sit down with someone and I try on another smaller watch. The watch that I'm wearing right now, actually. And I go, okay, so I just need smaller watches. So I don't make any purchases. We fly home, and then I start researching. And the first watch that I buy is a vintage Rolex Datejust from 1975. It's reference number 1603. So it's a 36 millimeter watch. I bought it on like the StockX marketplace for watches. It's called Chrono 24. And it was from a Swiss dealer. And so they send it out. I got it like cheaper than, it was cheaper than a lot of the other ones I was looking at. Same reference numbers. Oh, great condition, pre-owned. I wanted one from like 1975. I wanted my first watch to be like twice my age.
Yeah.
So every time I put it on, I was like, hey, you're young, you're in business, you have no idea what's ahead. Like things have come up during, your professional and personal career that have been very difficult. And just like this watch, just keeps ticking. You just keep going. And I was like, wow, like that's cool to wear something on my wrist.
myself a watch.
Yeah, right. So I was like, so wearing something on my wrist that's like that much older, like, that's really cool. So it arrives. And the first thing that I'm like tips me off, it was weird. It's like, they said it was going to come with the box. And when you're buying a watch, it's like new, pre-owned, whatever. And does it come with the box and the papers? The older a watch is, the less likely it's going to come with that. And it didn't really matter to me that it didn't come with the papers. But I did want it to come with the box. And that's what I thought was cool about this listing. So I get it. I open it up. It's not the Rolex green box. It was like the Swiss dealer's green box. And I was like, okay. And then I reach out to them like, hey, it didn't come with the box. And they were really apologetic and like, oh, I'm really sorry. And Chrono is different from StockX. So you buy a shoe on StockX, they have to verify the shoe before they send it out. They can't really do that with watches because the only way to verify a watch is really to open it up and look. And so what they do is they only work with reputable dealers who like, no, it's like a real store and this is what we do. And they check out the store, they verify the store, and then that dealer becomes verified.
Sure.
If you're a private seller, they're like, hey, good luck. You can use it, but if you get this watch and you got scammed, that's tough. But if it's through a dealer, you're covered. So I was like, I wasn't too worried, but this is my first, probably the biggest financial transaction I've ever spent that wasn't like on a house or a car.
Yeah.
And it arrives, and okay, so I write them like, hey, person sent out the wrong thing, we'll send it a box tomorrow. I was like, a box? Like, I want the box.
Right.
Like, okay, whatever. Yeah. So I put the watch on, and it's too big. It's fine, as I expected it to be. So I take it to the local jeweler in Thorold, Stedman's, and they're very kind, and they take out the links and they put it on. And at this point, I've realized this watch does not keep time.
The one thing it's supposed to.
Within a minute, it is already like 5 seconds behind.
Yikes.
And so my analogy of like, it just keeps ticking. Now, oh my gosh, it's all falling apart.
Yeah, your life falls apart with it. Yeah.
The thing is, vintage watches, they need to be serviced. All watches need to be serviced every 10 years or so. And so maybe this just hadn't been serviced. It was in amazing condition, like aesthetically, it was just great. So it didn't really bother me. So I say to this watchmaker, Stedman's, I'm like, can you work on this? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. So they take it back and they're like, I just took it to the watchmaker and he says, no, Rolex really only lets Rolex deal with their watches. So I was like, okay. So I make an appointment with Rolex. There's like 2 in Toronto. I drive there. And I have an appointment this time. They let me in. They look at it and they're like, yep, okay, this is totally, what a great watch. Like, good banter. And they're like, well, what's going to happen is we're going to take the watch in. And within 2 weeks, Rolex will send you back a quote. And they told me what it was going to cost. So like, it's going to be $1,000 to fix this watch. And I was like, okay. And they're like, and then you'll just sign off on it. And then within 12 weeks, you'll get your watch. And I was like, dang. Like, yeah, I should have just paid like $1,000 more for the other listings. And then I just would have had the watch right away. I'm going to end up paying the same amount either way. But I was worried. I was like, what if they open this up and they're like, this isn't a Rolex?
Right.
That was what I was worried about. But what I was happy about was because I took it to Rolex, they're allowed to open it up. If some watchmaker had opened it up and found it was fake, then that means the warranty and the covering that this marketplace had, they won't cover it anymore because you opened up this watch. You shouldn't have opened it up. So like, we'll cover you if it's fake. How do you figure it's fake? You can't. Okay. So Rolex gets back to me in 2 weeks. I guess it's going to cost $1,000. It's a real watch.
Nice.
12 weeks.
Nice.
But this was going to be the summer of watches.
Yeah. You still got one on.
I got another one.
Yeah.
So the other watch that I wanted was this Cartier Santos, medium-sized. And what's special about this watch, and it's also that one that I tried on in Lisbon, is unlike Rolex, that you can go in and get this watch.
Okay.
So I booked with Cartier in Toronto. I go in, I buy the watch, we bring the family in. So through those double doors, like in Uncut Gems where they get stuck, like you have to buzz in, the first door closes, they buzz you in the second one, the kids come in, the jeweler, this is Humbertown Jewelers, shout out to them in Etobicoke. They come out with bears with their logo on it for each of the kids while I wait. So a bear for each. He's working on the links, we get it sized perfectly, we pay, we're chatting, it's all great. So this watch is like, it kind of plays a pretty cool cool role in the legacy of watches, especially for men. So this watch was developed for this guy named Santos, who right around the time of the Wright brothers was also like pioneering flight for all of us. His story is a little bit less told than the Wright brothers because, the Wright brothers were American. And rah, rah.
Yeah.
So the problem was Santos, he had this pocket watch because men had pocket watches at the time. It was kind of considered feminine to wear a wristwatch. Men had pocket watches. He's like, I can't freaking fly this plane and then look at this pocket watch.
Right.
I need it to be on my wrist. So he goes to his friend Cartier. And Cartier develops this Santos watch that we still have today that was so he could wear it on his wrist and figure out the flight. And it's still iconic to this day for that reason. It's like this square, which is kind of like unique. I'll put it in front so the camera can see.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unique. Think about circular watches. And so this one is brand new. The other one is from 1975.
Keeps time.
This one does keep time.
Nice.
And as I wait for the Rolex to get fixed, I would say I love them both equally. They are, I have this one for the summer. And there are only 10 spots, Alex, in this watch box.
So 2 are spoken for.
Yes, like this is not shoes. Like
Right.
I'm not having like dozens, like there will be 10 at max ever. And 10 maybe when I'm like 50 or 60. Like
Sure.
these watches are not cheap. Like you have to really build up for them.
Yeah.
So like I have this wish list. Like I'd really like to get an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. That's like their kind of iconic silhouette. It's an octagonal shape, but they're huge. They're like these monsters. But they have these like 34, 36, 37 millimeter versions. And here's what's awesome. I always got screwed in the shoe game because my feet are size 8, 8.5, 9.
Right.
Who else is size 8, 8.5, 9?
Everyone.
Kids.
Yeah.
Teenagers, the people that want shoes. If you're a size 12, 13, 14, and you care about the new J's, they're a lot easier to get because you're not in competition with ninth graders. But I always am. And so I was always paying so much for these hype shoes because like every 10th grader wants them as well. But in watches with my little baby wrists, nobody wants the small ones.
There you go.
So I was talking with the Rolex dealer, and he's like, "Yeah, it'd be hard to get a Rolex." And I'm like, "Okay, like I like these Yachtmasters, like these 37 mil rhodium." He's like, "Oh, the 37 mil, not the 40."
I got it.
Well, that would be a lot easier
Yeah.
to get. And I was like, "Yes, my theory is proved correct."
Amazing.
There's kind of like the GOAT watch brand is Patek Philippe, and these are all like Swiss, Rolex, AP, Patek Philippe, they're all Swiss. And there's some really cool vintage Pateks that I like, the annual calendars, 5036 reference number. I'm saying this so you can kind of put them
What
on
about the one
screen.
that I sent you the other day? That's a working metronome.
Oh, yeah, from Seiko.
How
Yeah,
cool is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, yeah, lots to be said about watches. The thing about watches, though, is, I'm the only one that's into it, right? Now, you've shown some interest. And so, to that end,
No.
live on the second week
No.
of the Pro Church Tools Show. Okay, so these are 2 watches from my previous collection.
Wow.
In the world of watch enthusiasts, they are well regarded, but they're not the right fit for me.
Yes.
So you get to choose one.
Do I have to make my choice now, or can I sit with it for a little while?
No, you have to make it right now for the pageantry. So on the left, your left, this is the Tissot Gentleman
Yeah.
Powermatic.
Yeah.
And then on the right, this is the Young Hans Max Bill. Now they are very distinct from each other.
They're 2 really different watches. And I you know me, and we've talked about this on the show before. When it comes to aesthetics, I'm all black all the time mostly, and so that one on the right really does speak to me more than the one on the left.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And look at it go. I have not wound this thing. It has just been in my belt bag.
Yeah.
Moving around, and look at it. It is ticking already.
Keeping time.
Just because that's what these automatic
Wow.
watches do, right? That's what's so cool about the engineering. There's no battery. These aren't quartz.
Yes.
They just are powered off of the movement of it being on your wrist.
Amazing. What a moment. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Yes.
that is actually my favorite one from the old collection.
Wow.
And
Just didn't work for you.
Yeah, it just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I hope that it's great. I actually have a bunch of bands too. It's easy to take off the band. So I have a green one. So if you wanted to match to your shirt.
Amazing. We announced a giveaway on the top of the show, and I did not know that I was
You
in
didn't.
for an own giveaway of my own. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
If you want to win the drone,
No watches for you.
this Tissot, I'm sorry, I can't give it away just yet.
Yeah.
The drone, it is available, and the other 3 prizes, or the other 2 prizes overall. So enter in, and we'll be back next week, as we always are. Talk to you then. If you want your question answered on a future episode of the Pro Church Tools Show, send us a text to 1-800-485-3139. New episodes of the Pro Church Tools Show drop every Wednesday, so subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks as always for your time, attention, and trust, and talk soon.